10 minutes past 10 in the AM, you're listening to Me Nihal live on the BBC Asian Network. With a question, can a suicide bomber ever be regarded as a hero? Azadbir on Twitter said, quite interestingly, throw a soldier's uniform on and suddenly it's okay. Humans justify any ill load, don't they? Context is vital. I find it interesting how a soldier is justified to kill. Any thoughts on the random drone attacks in Pakistan? Jatinder said suicide bombers are cowards and murderers, killing for a faith that condemns the act of murder. Sabina on Twitter said killing is never right. Soldiers kill, but it is their job and do under control. Anyone else doing it is wrong and criminal. What do you think? That's what people on Twitter are saying. What are you saying? Let's speak to Naseem Amir, Director of the Hillingdon Assembly of Muslim Youth. Naseem, very good morning to you. Welcome back to the show.
Good morning.
Naseem, can a suicide bomber ever be regarded as a hero?
Well, let me begin by first saying that the family of the suicide bomber is entitled to their grief.
Of course.
And expressing what they are feeling and how their emotions are taking them through that journey in whichever way is necessary for them. And I completely understand and sympathise with them in this emotional state that they must be in right now.
Yeah.
However, I do feel it's important to... I feel it is a very difficult thing for me to say that there is anything
heroic
about doing something which, in my opinion, opposes the tenets of Islam.
But
killing oneself,
yes,
and the killing of anyone innocent and non-combatants is not accepted in Islam.
But then you see, that's the distinction his brother has made, isn't it? That they weren't killing non-combatants, they were going to a prison, which I presume these are people employed by Assad's state, to free people who he felt was being tortured. Now, does not Islam tell you that you should stand up against oppressors and dictators?
However, not in a manner that will... not indiscriminately and not in a manner that will almost certainly ensure your own death.
But by being a soldier going into a war zone, by that rationale,
you are not killed by your own hand.
Sorry?
You are not in that situation killed by your own hand.
So that's the distinction, that because he knew consciously that there were explosives in that truck and that his life would end as a result of that, that is in fact haram. But by your understanding.
Because the reason why I won't use terms as absolute as that is because I cannot know the intentions of the person who was doing that, who was carrying it out. I cannot know the situation on the ground.
But can there not be a bigger picture, Naseem, in the sense that, well, I'll inform you of the context because his own brother said it on the news, is that he went in there to free prisoners who, as far as he understood it, were being tortured by the Assad regime. This was not driving a truck into a marketplace where women and children were going about their daily shopping, or in a shopping mall, or in a hotel lobby. This was attacking a place where the Assad regime kept people against their will, a prison.
I do understand that. It is like I've said, I'm not in any way, shape or form judging the intentions of the person doing this. It's not for me to say so. However, suicide is not accepted in Islam. It just isn't.
Okay. I mean, let's speak to Ashkar Bukhari, spokesperson from the Muslim Public Affairs Committee on this. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
Welcome back to the show. Now,
thanks for having me.
Ashkar, Naseem is saying clearly that you are not allowed to intentionally kill yourself in Islam. Therefore, this man cannot be regarded as a hero.
Well, that's her opinion, and there are people who hold that opinion.
What's yours?
There is a difference of opinion in amongst the Muslims, and I think it's a pretty cool and kind of cold way of viewing Islam, that a man who goes and tries to free people who are being tortured to death in the most horrific way and gives his life up to save those people is seen as someone who is acting against God. And what type of cool God these people must think we worship, that he would be more happy that they die in their tortured state than a man or a Muslim give his life up to save them. I don't know, but personally, as an ethical, moral dilemma, I believe in a God that would say it is the highest deed for you to give your life to save others, and if that means sacrificing your life to save others, I think most mankind, Muslim or not or non-Muslim, would say that was the right thing to do.
Naseem?
Well, I would disagree in the fact that if Asghar here is suggesting that I am saying that there should be no, there should be no attempt to rescue people who are being tortured.
He didn't say that.
That's
Yeah.
not at all what I'm saying.
No, he didn't say
at all. All I'm saying is that suicide is not the way forward. Intentional suicide is not acceptable. There are other ways. If those ways are unsuccessful, we need to find more other ways. And if those are still unsuccessful, Islam tells us, well, when you do what you can within the limits of what you've been told is acceptable, and beyond that, you speak about it so that other people are made aware and they can help. Beyond that, if there's nothing else you can do, you pray. It is not enough to say that, no, this is the only way forward, and I agree that the individual involved must have had some very noble intentions to give up his life to do this. And I will in no way undermine that. That's not what I'm trying to do.
You're undermining it by saying that it's against God.
No, what I'm saying
undermining it.
is no, I'm not undermining his intentions. There is a very big distinction between accepting his intention for doing something and accepting the nobility of that intention, and accepting the act in which, or the way in which he acted on those intentions. There is a big difference between that. To suggest to the general public, to young people here in Britain, for example, that is something that we should aspire to, when in fact Islam says suicide is forbidden. It is forbidden.
And Asghar,
there is no difference of opinion on suicide being a forbidden thing in Islam.
And Asghar, that's an important point that Naseem has just made, hasn't she, about its influence, and she is a young British Muslim, its influence that's saying that this is acceptable in Islam to be able to do this. Naseem clearly feels it is not acceptable in any way, shape or form to do what this man did.
Naseem's got the luxury of saying whatever she wants, because it's not her mother, her children or her father being tortured to death, having their arms amputated, their eyeballs burnt out with blow torches. It's not her in that state. She can sit there and theorize and act as if she's fighting for some higher noble cause. But the proof of it, or the fact of it, is that if anyone was being tortured to death and you had no other option but to give your life to save them,
but presumably there were other options.
She can say, well, there's other ways. But what happens? I mean, just hypothetically, putting her own theory to test, if there was no other way, just leave it. Just let them die. Let them be, brutally tortured in the most horrific way. I suggest that. Well, no, but I'm testing your theory. You say that there's other ways. Let's assume that there is no. Would you give your life for someone else or not?
In certain circumstances, yes, not in all circumstances. And I think it is very insulting for you to suggest that you have no idea who I am. You have no idea what my family goes through. You have no idea what parts of the world they're in.
I'm not being tortured, though, don't I? Because you're on this radio station.
I have no idea whether they are or they're not. You don't know that. You're making an absolute statement.
Well, tell me, are they?
No.
Well, okay, we're not going to go down this line. I'm going to leave you both for 1 second. Asghar and Naseem, stay with us. Vic in Bradford is on the line. After that, Mohammed Shafiq, a guest of mine from the Ramadan Foundation, is on the line. Vic, good morning.
Morning now.
Do you think that this man is a hero?
Unfortunately, no, I don't. Not in this case. As in, we just need to look at the group he was with, the Al-Nusra Front, who he was travelling with. They've done 10 times worse things than has been known that the Assad regime has done. As in, it's known that the group who he was with are known to travel around Syria beheading people who don't believe in Islam. They behead Christians, they behead Druze. Last week it came out that they killed a child because they thought he mocked the Prophet. So these are the type of people who this man was with when he blew himself up. So for people who are saying he wasn't a terrorist, I'm sorry, but I think he was a terrorist, and if he wasn't a terrorist, he was hanging around with a massive group of terrorists who are known to blow themselves up. So, no, I don't think he's a hero. And just the one point, because what we did actually ask was, is it ever right to blow yourself up? I don't know. Not in a religious point of view, I don't think you can. But like I said to your producer, what would someone have said if someone blew Hitler up at the peak of the Second World War? It might have been a different story then, but in this case, I think he was definitely, in my eyes, I think he was a terrorist for what he did and who he was with. If he'd done it on his own and he wasn't with al-Nusra, then maybe not. But because he was with them and they're known to be terrorists, they're on the British terrorist list, the American terrorist list, he was with terrorists, so therefore I think he was a terrorist when he did what he did.
Ashgar?
I can't speak for al-Nusra, I don't know enough about them. But
all you have to do is...
Let him finish.
He raises an interesting point about Hitler. If someone was to kill Hitler in a suicide attack, I don't think anyone would have said it was.
But we're not talking about Hitler. I mean, interestingly enough, though, Vic, this is why. Sorry, Ashgar. This is why, of course, the MP for Crawley is asking for things beyond the prevent strategy to combat radicalisation, because of the very fact that this man, that his family are calling a hero, was in the company of the al-Nusra Front, which has been designated as a terrorist organisation by the United Nations, by the United States, by Australia and by the United Kingdom. So you can understand why someone like Vic would say that I don't trust this man's intentions, and we can't be sure that people like him, British citizens, would not come back here and enact the same kind of revenge in the same way that the killers of Lee Rigby found justification for their crimes.
Is that a question to me? Sorry.
Yes, sorry, Ashgar, yes.
Yeah? No, I reject that. The reason why, and this is the big argument that's going on in Britain about terrorism, a group of people argue that the reason why Muslims do acts of violence like this is because of some sort of hate preacher or version of their religion. I argue, and many others argue, many experts argue, that it is because of Western foreign policy. So people that are fighting in Syria have no cause greater than anyone else, any other Muslim, right, to commit an act of terrorism if it's not about foreign policy. And as far as I'm informed, Britain is supporting the rebels in Syria. So those people in Syria are hardly likely to bite the hands that feeds them, as long as our foreign policy is ethical and does not destroy millions of lives.
You mean like the Mujahideen did
terrorism
to America, you mean?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Well, people often cite, do they not, that the Mujahideen, which became the Taliban, were in its initial stages funded by America. So talking about the principle of biting the hand that fed it, there's an example of it right there. But let's speak to...
The other way around, in fact, because the Americans used the Mujahideen to defeat the Russians. Once they did that, not only did they abandon Mujahideen, but then they invaded the very country, didn't they?
People often argue... Yeah, but that was on the back of... But that was on the back of course, 9/11. So that happened off the back of that. They hadn't invaded Afghanistan before that.
No, incorrect. The Taliban, and this is, you can YouTube it, you can Google it, right? The Taliban actually said to the Americans, "You don't have to invade us. We will give Osama bin Laden up, but we won't give him up to an American court." So again, there was no justification for a war in Afghanistan.
Well, I'm not wrong, because of course they didn't invade before 9/11. That was my point. Right, Mohammed Shafiq.
I'm saying you don't invade. No, okay. There's many terrorists that are British. There's many terrorists that are American. No one has invaded this country off the back of one terrorist, and it's the same principle when you invade a whole country off Afghanistan because of Osama bin Laden.
Okay. Let's speak to Mohammed Shafiq from the Ramadan Foundation. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning, Al.
Can you ever regard a suicide bomber as a hero? Ashgar Bukhari says that actually what he did was a heroic act. It's sacrificing himself to help the greater good, to help people who are being tortured.
Well, I think if you are looking at this from the religious context, as the people who claim that martyrdom in Islam is a worthy act, but suicide bombing and being involved in terrorism, it's totally forbidden. It's haram. There's a number of Islamic authoritative voices across the world, whether it's in the Indian subcontinent. You got Dr. Tal Qadri, who produced a fatwa, 600-page fatwa, edict saying terrorism and suicide bombing is forbidden. Or whether you talk about Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayyad, the great Arab scholar from Saudi Arabia, who's of a Sunni background, every single person with authority within Islam says terrorism and suicide bombing is absolutely wrong. And so he's not a hero. He's a criminal, and there's no doubt about that. And people who are going to Syria to engage in that battle with terrorist groups as al-Nusra or al-Qaeda do not act in the name of Islam and are acting contrary to Islam. And I think that's very, very clear. Obviously, on a human level, when you see the suffering that's going on in Syria, that obviously
affects people, doesn't it?
Yes. It affects people, and it makes people, as if they want to do something. But I don't think going there, strapping bombs on yourselves and blowing yourselves up does anything to help the people. I mean, he carried out that act. Is Assad still in power? Yes. Has Assad's regime been damaged by that? Well, he's lost a few prison officers, police officers, and that's it. The regime still stands. So I don't think this is a solution to tackling the problems of the Syrian conflict.
Okay, I mean, Ashgar, Mohammed clearly differs from you because he's describing this gentleman who committed suicide in the act of destroying Aleppo prison as a criminal.
Shocking, isn't it? I mean, I've got the utmost respect for Mohammed Shafiq. I know him personally, and I've always admired him when he comes on the media. He speaks he's got more guts than most Muslim spokespeople. But on this instant, he couldn't be more wrong. I mean, firstly, on the scholars' part, Shawkat Qaradawi, who's one of the biggest scholars in the Middle East, says suicide bombing is fine. So there is a difference of opinion depending on if the cause is right, if you're doing it for a just reason. How can you say something is evil when any rational man, if you took the kind of Muslim word out of it and just went up to a random white guy and said, if you gave your life to save people being tortured to death, would that be a noble thing? Most white guys would go, yeah, that's really decent. But if you, as soon as you all of a sudden he's a Muslim and put in his brown and he's got a beard, oh, hold on, maybe it's not so right. And there's the nub of it. I believe that any rational human being, any ethical human being, and surely Islam is not a unethical religion. It's not just about random rules and random regulations. It's about saving humanity. And what is more cruel on this earth than people who torture other people to death? And if you are going to stop that torture, you're going to do something to give your life to save people from being tortured, surely that is the highest of all noble acts. And
okay, Mohammed.
I cannot get my head around.
Okay, him being described as a criminal, Mohammed.
Well, I think that, as Oscar says, there is a difference, but there's a minority of scholars within the Islamic world, right? You look at the Sunni Shia Wahhabi school of thought, who believe that suicide bombing is allowed, but majority of the Islamic scholars agree that it's not allowed, and they speak with some authority. They've done some research. The Dr. Dal Qadri fatwa is very, very clear, and it's very authoritative and gives clear rulings from Islamic scriptures. So, I'm going to disagree with Oscar. Yes, we've got to confront the evil nature of the regime of Bashar al-Assad, and we've got to be consistent on that. But strapping bombs on yourselves and blowing yourselves up is not allowed under Islam, and anybody who does that act is a criminal under the eyes of Islamic rules. I've been very clear about that.
Naseem, you want to come back in? Naseem?
The way.
Sorry, 1 second, Mohammed. Naseem, you want to come back in?
Well, I'm agreeing with Mohammed here that there is a big distinction between fighting in warfare, in battle, for a cause. That is a very heroic and extremely noble act. The distinction between that and suicide, which is not noble. I'm sorry, but it isn't. If there are those who are saying that, it's fine.
It is noble because you're giving your life up.
One second, you can't all speak at the same time. Wait a minute, Ashgar, come back in. Ashgar, come back in.
It is noble on any Islamic, rational, human spectrum. You are giving your life up when you love your own children, you love your own family, you have everything to live for, and you give it up to save people who are being tortured to death. How can anyone argue that is not noble?
Can I come in?
Yes, go, Mohammed. Okay, Mohammed.
One way to do that, and Islam has made it very clear. You do not give your own life up in a manner that is distinguished as being suicide.
Okay, Naseem, stop there. Mohammed.
Well, I was just going to say that there are a number of people who went to Libya to fight against Gaddafi, but didn't join terrorist organizations like Al-Nusra or Al-Qaeda. And, there are people, there are Syrian people who've gone back to Syria to fight Bashar al-Assad through the opposition parties.
That's a separate point. Mohammed, that's a separate point. We're not arguing about one group. We're talking about is it right or wrong?
Guys, let Mohammed finish his point. Go on, Mohammed.
Let me finish the sentence. And so that I think would be a noble cause. Fighting Bashar al-Assad on the battlefield would be fine, and people would recognise why people are having to do that. I wouldn't encourage British people to do that.
Is this? I mean, Mohammed,
it's available for Syrians, but the idea that somehow carrying out terrorism or carrying out suicide bombing is a noble cause. It's just not true.
Does that
run contrary to Islam?
I mean, Nassim Amir, who's director of the Hillingdon Assembly of Muslim Youth, she voiced concerns that young British Muslims here may think of it as being a noble thing to do. Does that worry you as well?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I think when people look at what's happening there, Nihal, people will be very, very saddened and want.
It's a tragedy. I mean, it's a human tragedy, isn't it?
It's a human tragedy, and I think the responsibility for this rests with the regime and rests with the international community that's just stood by and watched this happen. We were very quick to take military action in Libya, but 2 years later, 3 years later, you're waiting for some sort of action. It does concern me, and certainly. I think the work that I've done, I was at a meeting yesterday here in Manchester where I spoke to a group of school children about the threat of terrorism, and people are concerned. People are expressing views about, they think that, Assad is going to be confronted. But, we can't put ourselves in a situation where we see people in our country being radicalised on the back of terrorist organisations in that world. And me of all people, Nihal, after Lee Rigby's brutal murder, received death threats from Al-Shabaab. I received death threats from Al-Qaeda. I'm persona non grata according to these organizations, but that doesn't scare us. We've got to confront this evil ideology, and we've got to confront terrorism.
Okay, it's interesting, isn't it, this, because it's become a Muslim story, but essentially I'd be interested to know what Sikhs think of this. The reason being, of course, that Beant Singh, the Chief Minister of Punjab, back in 1995, was killed by a suicide bomber, a Sikh suicide bomber. So I'd be really interested to know, if you're a Sikh, what you think of suicide bombers. Is there a context where you will say, actually, yes? Because there are many Sikhs, I'm sure, listening, and many who probably won't agree with this, but there are many who believe that Dilwar Singh Baba, the man who did blow up the Chief Minister of Punjab back in 95, is a hero. So what do you think? Because you might be thinking, as a non-Muslim, that this has got nothing to do with you. But as a Sikh, what do you think? Can a suicide bomber ever be regarded as a hero? 81869 is the text. Email nihal@bbc.co.uk. Ashgar is arguing that it's about context, and it is in fact a noble deed if you are trying to save people who are being tortured, whereas Mohammed Shafiq from the Ramadan Foundation and Nassim Amir, director of the Hillingdon Assembly of Muslim Youth, believes that it is profoundly un-Islamic. Mohammed Shafiq goes as far to describe Abdul Wahid Majid as a criminal. But what do you think? And I'd be interested to hear from Sikhs on this as well. It's not just a Muslim issue. If you think about what happened in 95. Beant Singh, of course, was allegedly blamed for thousands of killings, murders of Sikhs, and someone killed him by blowing up Beant Singh's bulletproof car, August 31st, 1995. That puts a different angle on it. What do you think? Lots of texts coming in. No, I've studied Islam and it's not allowed in Islam because there are different rules when international boundaries are there. Islam is a religion of peace. Killing anyone is against Islam and is haram. Nowhere does it say in the Quran that it's right to kill yourself or someone else. Nilam Sultan has texted in to say suicide bombers are murderous. In Islam, suicide is haram. Anyway, how can we justify suicide bombers as heroes? By any means, it is an act of atrocity, and he is a murderer. Nihal, it's Farid. I'm Muslim, but I don't think he's a hero. I think he's spineless, because nowhere in Islam does it say that we should harm anyone in that way. His family thinks he's a hero. They should be charged with supporting terrorism, because it's the same, regardless of what country it's in, not in the name of my religion. 81869 is the text number. Email nihal@bbc.co.uk or give us a call on 08459 440 445. Can a suicide bomber ever be regarded as a hero? On this very station, let's speak to Saj, who got in contact with us. Saj, very good morning to you.
Morning, how are you?
I'm very well, mate. Thank you for reaching out to us on this subject. Do you think that this man was a hero or a criminal?
I wouldn't go as far as calling him a criminal, but I wouldn't say he's a hero either.
Why was he not a hero?
Well, first of all, he's a British Asian. That's not our problem, is it? You should worry about problems here where he's living, not about problems in another country.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, I suppose the Ummah, does it not dictate to you that regardless of where they are in the world, a Muslim is your brother or your sister, regardless of where they are?
Oh, yeah, I agree, but then you have more problems here amongst your own families, amongst your own community. Why are you going to go all the way across the world to fight other Muslims for no reason? That's my view.
Right, okay. Saj, thank you very much indeed for that. I just want to play you listening to BBC Asia Network right now in case you missed the beginning of the show. The reason why we're talking about this today, and that is down to the family of a suicide bomber describing him as a hero. The suicide bomber in question, Abdul Wahid Majid from Crawley in West Sussex, died last month when he drove a truck bomb into the gates of Aleppo prison in Syria. He originally went not to Syria, but to the refugee camps on the Turkish border. And he was helping with construction, helping to sort out the sanitation in the camps. He was, by all accounts, a humanitarian. But then obviously something changed. Changed to the point where he was willing to take his own life in order to free what he felt were prisoners who were being tortured by the Assad regime in Aleppo prison, leaving behind a wife and 3 children in this country. Here's what his surviving brother Hafiz Majid had to say about Abdul.
My brother was a hero. He was not a threat to the British public. If my brother had been a British soldier and there were British people in that prison and the act he actually did, I know he would have been awarded the posthumous Victoria Cross.
Do you agree with him? Yasser got in contact with us from Birmingham. Yasser, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks for calling in, Yasser. Do you regard Abdul Wahid Majid as a hero for doing what he did?
No, I don't, frankly. I mean, I don't know if your other guest is still on. I would like to ask him the question. If he thought this guy was a hero, was he going to follow in the footsteps of this guy? Because if I think somebody is a hero, I'm going to try and emulate what he's done. So if this guy thinks this young man was a hero, then is he going to follow in his footsteps and try and do what he did?
Well, I mean, Ashgar Bukhari is still with us from the Muslim Public Affairs Committee.
I'd like to ask him that question.
Well, you can. Ashgar, he's asked you a question.
From what I know of him, and I have only heard some of the headlines and spoken very briefly about my understanding of this chap and his act, but currently I think he is a hero. I think his act was heroic. Am I going to follow his act? I'll be completely honest with you. No, I'm not brave enough. I'm not man enough. But B, also, right here in the UK, I believe that Muslims can do a great deal of benefit, to Muslims right around the world by getting involved politically, and that's the route that I am taking. So no, I'm not kidding myself. I'm no Superman. I'm no superhero. I'm not going to drive no bomb into into a torture chamber. But am I going to sit around and do nothing and act pontificate about why other people are so bad and I'm so great? No, I'm not. I'm gonna get off my backside and I'm going to do something. And what I am going to do is I'm going to get involved politically to make a change to all the oppression right around the world.
Mm. Within that though, Ashgar, does it worry you that young British Muslims will regard it as a noble act and a heroic act to go out there and sacrifice their young lives potentially and destroy the lives of their own families in doing something like this? Look,
the bottom line is, those people in the Middle East, right, who are going through a kind of hell of a life right now, yeah? Humanity demands some form of action, i.e. not passive, feeling for them or praying to God, but some form of action. And what Muslims right around the world, and that's why there is these groups like Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and all sorts of groups springing up, is because Muslims are saying, well, we have to do something. We can't do nothing. Yeah, and some people are saying, well, let's take to violence to overthrow a violent action against us. And others are saying, no, we can get involved politically. For example, I'm lucky enough to be involved in a democracy, and I can have my view without being locked up or tortured. Well, some people over there, they can't be, they don't have that option. They don't have an option of speaking because they'd just simply be, kidnapped and killed. And so I would say to Muslims here is, guys, get involved politically. I don't just mean become an MP. I don't mean, vote strategically. I mean, in all political spectrums, whether you're a rapper, like Loki, who you've had in your program.
Who sadly retired some years ago, yes. But
yeah,
or Riz MC.
Where's Loki version 2? I mean, there's hundreds of young kids who are artists, rappers,
So you would actively dissuade young British Muslims from going out there and fighting and killing themselves in the process?
I would say it would be more effective to be politically involved here than it is there. That's logically speaking, if you really want to make a difference to the country that actually has massive power around the world, and that's the capitals of Europe and America. So get involved in the political process here. I would definitely say that.
Okay, Yasser? Are you satisfied with Ashgar's answer that he's not actually brave enough?
Not at all, I'm afraid. I mean, this guy's a disgrace, to be honest with you. He's totally contradicting himself.
How?
He doesn't want to encourage people to go over there and fight and kill themselves, yet he's calling this guy who's done exactly what he's saying he wouldn't encourage, a hero. By calling him a hero,
Why is that? Why is it? Just to clarify, so I can understand why I'm such a hypocrite. Why is that? Why is that a contradiction? On the one hand, let me just clarify. Yeah. On the one hand, you have a guy.
One second, yes. So let Ashgar finish. I promise I'll bring you back in. Go on, Ashgar.
Yeah. So on the one hand, you have a guy who's sacrificed his own life to save people from being tortured to death, right? And on the other, you have me saying that, guess what? Although I think that's an amazing heroic act, if it's just in that frame, on the other hand, I can say you can do practically a lot of good right here in the UK.
But you did describe it as noble, didn't you, earlier on? And as Yasser pointed out, if someone is described as a hero, if someone is described as noble, then surely it is the duty of people to aspire to that kind of heroism, to aspire to that kind of nobility. And that's where Yasser, I think, believes the hypocrisy comes in, because you are not asking people to aspire to that kind of heroism. You're not asking them to do that because you feel that actually you'd be better served by not doing that.
One is an act that is noble, as in the greatness of the act in saving another person's life. The other is the effectiveness of the act. You see the difference? One is, yes, he did an act that was noble because he gave his life to save others. But could he have done more here in the UK? Currently, I believe, yes, you can. So there you have an effectiveness versus the actual act, the courage it took to do the act.
All right, Yasser? And then we'll go to Rai. Rai, stay with us.
I'm sorry, but this guy's totally, I think it's confusing me and it's confusing himself. If you're calling something noble and amazing and heroic, people will aspire to follow in that person's footsteps. You cannot have it both ways. It's completely ridiculous. You're sitting in this country, in a comfortable place and yet saying somebody who's left his young family and children and gone and killed himself, a hero and noble, that's completely disgusting. I mean, I would like to ask you, have you asked his children if their father has been a hero or noble by leaving them behind? You know, have you thought about what they're going through? You sitting, with your own family, with your own children, in your own comfortable home, but and you're saying this guy's a hero by killing himself in another country thousands of miles away. Your first responsibility is your family, your wife, your children, and your country that you live in. Not some. I mean, there are people tortured all over the world. There are people being tortured in Saudi Arabia. There are people being tortured in Pakistan, where my family comes from. This country has absolutely nothing to do with us. Okay, it's wrong and it's horrifying, but it's nothing to do with us. Where else are you going to go? There's people being tortured all over the world.
All right,
Where else are you going to go?
We'll leave it there. Yes, sir. Thank you. Let's bring Ryan, who got in contact with us. Ryan, good morning.
Good morning, Nihal.
Tell me, you want to perhaps ask a question that hasn't been asked as yet?
Yeah, the question that I actually want to ask is how by killing himself has it made a difference to anything? I mean, anybody who's committed suicide, how has it made a difference to anything? I mean, people are power. We can make a difference to anything we like, but suicide is not the way, and it's definitely not hero. He's not a hero by killing himself. That's not right.
We don't know, do we, ultimately, what difference it made? But the fact was, but that's not necessarily the driving force behind why he did it. The driving force was that he felt that he could make a difference. And should we regard him as a hero because of that?
No, we shouldn't regard anybody as a hero who kills themselves. It's not right. Why would you commit suicide to try to save others? You're killing somebody else along with yourself who hasn't even wanted to die. So they haven't got a choice in this. And it is influencing young British Muslims. If you are saying that he's a hero by killing himself, it will influence the young generation here in the UK. It's not right saying that he's a hero, not at all.
Well, it's interesting. When I tweeted about the man who detonated a car full of explosives and killed the Chief Minister of Punjab, and the man who did that was a Sikh, a couple of tweets came back to me saying he got rid of one of the main cancers of Punjab for sure, a definite hero. Another, and that was from Prem, and then Smudge tweeted me saying anyone who seeks revenge for the wrongdoings to Sikhs in India by the public, police, army or the politicians is a hero. Now, so some people do... You don't think?
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you're out to do. Suicide is not the way. It's not the way. I mean, I can't think of any situation where, you've killed somebody because they did something wrong by suicide. But has that made a difference? Really? You got rid of somebody by killing yourself. How about if you just stay alive and influence people in other ways, which we have the power to do? Give the rest of your life, dedicate the rest of your life to these people who are being tortured, and do it in another way. Why get rid of yourself? If you're so passionate about doing this, then speak to somebody, put a group together, influence somebody, influence a country. You do not kill yourself. It doesn't make a difference. That's what my question is.
But as someone pointed out earlier on, if a suicide bomber had killed Adolf Hitler, it may have saved millions of lives.
And then again, it may not have.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Nasheen is in Manchester. Very good morning to you, Nasheen.
Good morning, Nihal.
Thanks for calling in, Nasheen. What do you think? Do you think that this man is a hero? Can you ever regard a suicide bomber as a hero?
No, I don't. The only thing I called in, simply because I had a question from Ashka, because I just want to ask him, how can you justify him as a hero? Because suicide is haram in Islam. It's forbidden in any shape and form at all. So how can you say he is a hero? I wanted to ask a question to him because it's confusing everyone.
Well, I mean, Ashkar has already answered that question in the sense that there are, and Mohammed Shafiq from the Ramadan Foundation said that it's a minority of scholars. But Ashkar, I mean, answer the question yourself again about this idea that actually there is no context in Islam whatsoever in which suicide is acceptable. There just isn't.
I think I think it's the word suicide that confuses people. The suicide is against, you're not allowed to kill yourself, i.e. you're depressed and you go and kill yourself. But as these people call it, they call it martyrdom, i.e. they're not committing suicide, i.e. simply they're depressed and they just want to finish their lives. They are saving other people and are giving their lives as a result.
But you're not going in as a soldier.
No, by killing yourself.
They're going in as soldiers in effect.
With the intention of going to kill yourself. If you have the intention, you're going to kill yourself, then it's not.
Okay, all right. I mean, look, without getting too Quranic about this, I mean, does the Quran actually say you can't commit suicide due to depression, or does it just say you can't commit suicide? Full stop. I mean, Nasheen, stay with us. Naseem, what is your understanding of it? Is it, as Ashgar is pointing out, no, you can't kill yourself if you're feeling down, but you can if you are a martyr?
If we're going to start playing semantic games here,
well, we kind of have to.
Plot, but to be honest, no. It's suicide is the intentional act of doing something which you know is going to result in your death.
Right. Okay.
That's suicide. The reason behind it is irrelevant.
Right. Okay. Nasheen?
And unfortunately, one thing that we have not addressed so far in this discussion is the other issue that this raises is that it's going to hinder so badly other humanitarian aid that is desperately needed in that country.
Well, you can't. I mean, look, the British government is as good as said it, and the security service is as good as said it. If you go to Syria for whatever reason, you'll come back and you will be arrested. That's already happened.
Well, there's that. But quite apart from anything else, Syria is going to close its doors to humanitarian aid, and that will affect millions. From this one thing, a whole spurt of issues could arise. So rather than actually being part of the solution, he may well have become part of a greater problem.
Nasheen, do you not accept the fact that as a Muslim, you regard other Muslims, wherever they be in the world, as your brothers and sisters, and if they are being oppressed, it is your duty to try and help them?
No, there's other way you can help them. You can't just... Suicide bombing is not justifying in Islam. It's not allowed at all. The people like Ashkar, they're confusing Islam and they're just using our religion in the name of terrorism. Suicide is haram in Islam in any shape or form.
So do you regard...
Can you not accuse me of using Islam, and can you not accuse me of justifying terrorism? Yeah, just because your opinion differs from mine doesn't mean you go around throwing accusations about me that are unsubstantiated.
I'm entitled to my opinion. I'm sorry.
And your opinion is wrong, and I've just said that. And if you want to back up your opinion live on air, then I'm more than willing to defend it. But what you don't do is just insult me, call me a terrorist or a person who's backing terrorism without...
Okay, Ashgar, wait there. Nasheen and Ashgar. The reason being, Ashgar, is if Nasheen regards what this man did as an act of terrorism, then of course by you calling him a hero, it's logical that she would assume that you are supporting terrorism.
Well, then in that case, she's a terrorist, because I believe that she's supporting Bashar al-Assad. He's committing terrorism, and therefore she's a terrorist. Can you see? You can make any conclusion and link any set of facts to point to any conclusion.
No, but it is important. Wait, Ashgar, let Nasheen finish. Nasheen, Ashgar, wait, Nasheen, go on.
Yeah, my question about suicide is totally forbidden. It's not allowed in any shape and form. How can you say that? How can you justify that?
Okay, all right. Nasheen.
Anybody can go and...
Yeah, okay, we'll leave it there. Nasheen in Manchester, thank you. Ashgar Bukhari, thank you to you.